Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 28 of free AWS DevOps Zero to Hero series, and in this video we will deep dive into the concept of cloud migration strategies on AWS platform. Now this video is very important because there are still a lot of companies such as MNCs who are exploring the path to the public cloud platform. That means either these MNCs are already working on the cloud migration projects, they are in between migrating their applications onto the public cloud platforms such as AWS, Azure, or GCP, or they haven't started the cloud migration. You might be thinking, Abhishek, there are still companies on on-premises. Yes, there are still a lot of banking companies who are on on-premises and they want to explore the path of cloud migration. Will it be beneficial for them or not? So, if you are applying for MNCs, you should be prepared for AWS cloud migration strategies. I mean, of course, if you are applying for AWS job description. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of videos on YouTube. There are a lot of documents, blogs, which talks about the different kinds of cloud migration strategies. Like these are the ones you will see a lot of blogs and YouTube videos talking about these 7 different kinds of cloud migration strategies. But to be very honest, your interviewer will not be 100% okay if you just talk about one of these cloud migration strategies, because this is just one simple stage of cloud migration. But before that, when you have to start with cloud migration, you have to follow some process. You have to create a project for this cloud migration, and in the project you ideally go through multiple stages. Now, I am teaching you these things from my personal experience because I was part of some very critical cloud migration process. Like back in 2015-16, I worked for cloud migration for one of the top European banks. And then in 2018, I also worked on a cloud migration freelancing project. So from my experience, I am teaching you how does a cloud migration project work. Now, this is where your interviewer will be mostly interested because you can read about these cloud migration strategies from internet, but your real experience will come into picture. Like during your interview discussion, if you just talk about these things, then your interviewer might say that, okay, you might have read about it, but how does your project work? Like what are the steps that you have taken? So first, any project with cloud migration would start with these steps. The first step would be preparation. I'm going to explain you each and every step. Then the second step would be planning. The third step would be migrate. Fourth step would be monitor. And the fifth step would be optimize. Now, this is what you have to talk in your interviews. In your interview, if someone is asking about the cloud migration strategies, or if someone is asking about how did you migrate your applications onto cloud, talk about this entire thing. So all of these 7 cloud migration strategies that you read on the internet, they fall into these first 2 stages, right? They are part of your preparation and planning stage. But even after that, there are things like migrate, monitor, and optimize. So what are these things? Like literally, if you join any cloud migration project, how does that work? That is exactly what I'm going to talk in today's video along with this cloud migration strategies. Don't worry, I'll not skip the cloud migration strategies, but I'll focus on the entire thing along with the cloud migration strategies. So let's say initially you started, like you got selected as a DevOps engineer in one of these top MNCs, and let's say they have some 200 microservices. Okay. Or your MNC might have a single monolithic application itself. Okay. So either your MNC already has some 200 microservices, or it just has one monolith application, and your developers and the DevOps engineering team have to work closely and convert or transform this monolith application to the microservice architecture. So this will be your phase 1. That is the preparation stage. Okay. So during your preparation stage, firstly, you will check what is the current architecture of your applications. Is your applications already in the microservice architecture? Then you have passed the preparation stage. If your application is in the monolithic stage, then you need to convert this thing into the microservice architecture as part of your preparation stage. What happens if you don't convert monolith to the microservice architecture? The problem here is that when you move on to cloud, when you want to be cloud native in nature, okay, when you want your applications to be cloud native in nature, you move towards being in the microservice architecture. And these days, in the world of containers, in the world of containerization, containers are a very lightweight, simple processes that are individually managed and deployable. And microservices falls into the category, like, they are the best fit for the containers. So if you split your monolith application, or if you split your one big application into the microservice architecture, it will be very simple to deploy one microservice as a container on your Kubernetes platform or your container orchestration platform. So that would be your phase one, that is the preparation stage. Then you will go with the planning stage. Okay. As part of your planning, you will decide two things. Okay. One is you will decide which applications or which services have to go in phase one. Like usually, if you have some 200 microservices, you will split these 200 microservices into phases. Like you will say phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, and phase five. I'm just giving an example. Depending upon your applications, depending upon your companies, you can increase the number of phases or you can decrease the number of phases. So like you can say, amongst these 200 microservices, there are 20 microservices which are very, very critical. So let's put them in phase five. That means we will take them from on-premises onto the cloud platform as part of the last stage. Okay. So you can decide that on the phase five. Then you might be saying that there are some 50 applications that are very less user facing. Like, it can be very non-critical, or, those are the kind of applications on which you can perform your proof of concepts. So you can send them as part of your phase one. Then phase two, you will send slightly less critical. Phase three, you will send, you know, critical ones, more critical. And finally, the most critical ones you will send in the last phase. Okay. So this will be as part of your planning stage. Okay. As part of your planning, there will be two things. One is you will decide what are your phases. And the second thing as part of your planning would be to decide upon what cloud migration strategy should you choose. So there are 7 different types of cloud migration strategies. There are so many blogs, so many documentation videos that are available regarding these cloud migration strategies, but I'll still explain you. So first thing would be rehost. So rehost is basically lift and shift. What does that mean? Lift and shift means, let's say you have these 200 microservices on your on-premises or private cloud. So with very minimalistic effort, or with 0% effort, you will take these microservices from your on-premises cloud and deploy on the AWS cloud. Let me give you one simple example. Okay, so if you are choosing the rehost mechanism, let's say you have a Kubernetes cluster on your on-premises, and in your Kubernetes cluster, let's say you have some 3 namespaces. I'm just giving an example, and you have some 10 microservices deployed as pods. What you will do is you will create same Kubernetes cluster, same type of Kubernetes cluster on AWS platform. Let's say you will choose EC2 instances to create cluster with same operating system type and everything. And on top of that, again, you will create 3 namespaces in that Kubernetes cluster and you will deploy those applications. So literally there is no change except for these applications are on your private cloud, these applications are on your public cloud. Now this mechanism, that is lift and shift, works super fine if there is no dependency on your operating system, or if there is no dependency on your hardware that much, or there is not much dependency on your environment. Okay. So lift and shift is one of the most popular mechanisms that is employed, because these days when you write applications, you usually write applications platform independent, right? So let's say you are writing a Java application, you are writing a Go language application, right? Over the years, you might have turned your application platform independent. So that's why you can take these same applications and move from one place to another place. And traditionally, people did that as well, right? So you might choose one virtual machine platform such as VMware, and later you might decide that you want to move to OpenStack. That is quite possible. Similarly, in terms of lift and shift, what you are doing is you are taking your on-premises applications, and with minimalistic changes, you are moving them onto the cloud platform. Then you have re-platform. Okay. So as part of re-platform, what you will do is, again, this is a very simple strategy, but as part of re-platform, what you will try to do is you will try to add some little changes. Like once you decide to move your applications onto AWS cloud platform, you will take advantage of this AWS platform, right? Probably AWS has some very good services, or AWS has some, you know, things that can improve the efficiency, scalability, availability of your applications. For example, uh, instead of creating this Kubernetes cluster in one region, you can create the control plane in multiple regions, so that you can achieve high availability, or you can achieve scalability, right? So in such cases, you will go with the re-platform approach. And the other approach that you have, which is quite popular, is the re-architecture model, or it is also called as the refactor model. So refactor model is very, very suitable in this example that I've taken. Like let's say you are using the monolithic applications. Okay. So these monolithic applications that you are using have to be converted to microservices. And when that has to be converted to microservices, then you have to re-architecture your application. And when you re-architecture your application, you will explore for the latest and the new technologies, right? And you will go with the best things that are available on AWS. So you will re-architecture your monolithic application onto AWS as microservices, with the best possible services, with the best possible approach that is possible as of today. If AWS supports some good security things, AWS supports some very good tools for availability and scalability. What you will do is you will re-architecture your monolithic application onto the microservices, and to achieve the, or to get the best out of the AWS platform. So this approach is called as re-architecture. Now I'll explain you repurchase, retire, retain in a while. But before that, let's continue our discussion, because these are the three things that are most widely used: rehost, replatform, and re-architecture. Retire, retain, repurchase, and relocate are very, very simple. I'll talk about them. But before that, let's continue our discussion. Okay. So as part of your planning stage, this is the second thing that you will decide: what approach you have to take. Now, after that, you have your third thing. After preparation, planning, what you will do is you will focus on migration. As part of this migration, you will take your phase one and you will try to migrate onto your public cloud platform. Once you migrate, okay, like let's say your migration is done, what you will do after that is basically you will monitor your applications for a while. Let's say you have deployed this 50 applications as part of your phase one onto the public cloud platform. That is not done. You have to monitor your phase one applications for 1 month, 2 months, depending upon the criticality of your applications. You can give it to your beta customers, your internal customers, and tell them that, we have some 50 applications hosted on AWS. Why don't you share the feedback of the performance? Or you can create some dashboards, monitors, and say that, okay, this was my previous performance, and right now, how is the performance? So you will spend some 1, 2 months on this process, and then you will decide that, okay, my phase one migration is going good, right? And the final stage is to improve, or you can call it with different names. You can also say optimize. Now let me clear the screen and let me try to explain. Okay. So let's clear this drawing. So what did I tell you? There are different stages, such as when you join a company, and in your interview, if someone is asking, how did you approach towards the cloud migration strategy, or how did you migrate applications onto cloud? Do not start with talking about the 7 R's. So everybody knows about the 7 R's, but before that, you have to explain how did you work in a real project. Step one would be preparation. Step two would be planning. Step three would be migrate. Step four would be to monitor. Step five would be to optimize. Now, let me again deep dive. Now I'll go further into these concepts and explain you in a much detailed way. So like I told you, these 7 R's or the different migration strategies comes into picture in the preparation and planning. Some people say that they also come as part of the migrate. That's okay. You can assume whatever, but usually it comes as part of your preparation and planning stage. And your preparation and planning is done once. Okay. It is a one-time activity. What does that mean? So one-time activity means, let's say you have one monolithic application. Okay. So as part of your preparation, your development team and DevOps team has decided that, okay, let's split this one monolithic application onto 200 microservices. Okay. And then you will decide which applications has to go in phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, phase five, and what has to be the migration strategy. Should it be rehost? Should it be re-platform, etc., etc. Right? Once you decide upon the phases, and once you decide upon the migration strategy, you will never come back to these stages. Okay? You will never come back to the preparation and planning stage again. But the migration thing goes into multiple phases. So the step three is performed in multiple stages. In some companies, it can go to 1 year, 2 years, 3 years as well. Because there are companies, like I worked on a migration project back in 2015-16 for 1.5 years. Because it was a European bank and there were like 200, 300 microservices, and we did it in multiple phases, like 10 or 15 phases. So migrate is a stage where you start with, let's say, phase one, you work on this migrate stage, and you work on the monitor stage, right? You migrate, you monitor the phase one, like 50 applications, then you go back to the next 20 applications, next 20, 20, finally, let's say 100. I'm just giving an example. Okay. So these, if you decide in the planning and the preparation stage that there have to be 10 phases, the cloud migration has to go in 10 steps, then this activity, this migrate step, you'll perform 10 times. Now, typically what happens in the migrate stage? Basically, in migrate step, you will write some scripts as a DevOps engineer. Like, let's say you are choosing the lift and shift mechanism. Then you will write some scripts to, it can be some Terraform scripts or something, to create script for creating the EC2 instances, or you will write some shell scripts for starting the EC2 instances, what activities should happen, or you will write some CloudWatch logs, not logs, some CloudWatch monitors. You will write some cron jobs. You will monitor this activity in the CloudWatch continuously. So these are the things that you will perform as a DevOps engineer in the migrate and in the monitor stage. Or let's say your development or test team can share you some test automation scripts that you have to run once in every day. So you can create one Jenkins instance, and you can create a cron job, and you can run the tests on the EC2 instances like everyday ones. So these are the activities that you perform as part of the migrate and monitor. Finally, this is again one stage, that is a one-time activity. You will decide how to optimize. Now, what does optimize mean? Let's say you migrated all 200 applications onto the cloud platform. Then there will be one thing that you have to do, right? You have to evaluate if there is an advantage or not. Okay. So evaluation means, like, okay, I migrated onto cloud. What did I achieve? Okay. Did I get some cost benefit? Did I reduce the maintenance overhead? what did I achieve by spending 1 year, 2 years of time on this cloud migration? So you will evaluate, and then depending upon the outcome of your evaluation, you will optimize. That means, let's say there is some 40% cost optimization by migrating applications onto cloud. Now, in the optimize stage, you will see, okay, can we increase this 40% to 50%? If we can do, you can create some Jiras or you can create some task, and you can tell that in the optimization stage, okay, this is what I've observed. And right now we are at 40%, but we can improve our efficiency to 50% in 6 months, 1 year, whatever that could be. Right. So these are different stages that a company follows as part of the cloud migration. When interviewer asks you, do not directly talk about like, how did you migrate your applications onto cloud? Do not say that, okay, we use the lift and shift mechanism. Now everybody knows that there is a lift and shift mechanism. So much documentation is available. Anybody can read it and they can say it. But if you talk about all of these things, then the interviewer will understand, okay, you have really worked on the cloud migration, and you have worked in a cloud migration project over a period of time, and you have mastered the cloud migration. So this is how you have to explain. Now coming back to the migration strategies, it depends upon your application. It depends upon a lot of things, like whether your applications are containerized or virtual machines. Is your application a monolith or already into the microservice architecture, or your applications are sensitive, very secure? So these kind of things you have to consider. And now let's deep dive into the 7 R's. Okay, because we have discussed about the phases that are involved, or steps that are involved in the migration: preparation, planning, migrate, monitor, and optimize. Now I'll clearly explain you about that 7 R's. So I have already explained you about refactor. I've explained you about rehost, and I've also explained you about re-architecture, basically. Okay. So this is not re-platform. This is yeah. So I've explained you about the refactor approach. I've explained you about the rehost approach. I've explained you about the re-platform approach. Now there are other things as well, such as you have relocate, you have retain, you have retire, and I think I'm missing one more cloud migration stage. Let me quickly check. What is it? Yeah, it's called as repurchase. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there is no requirement that you have to remember all of these things, because in any company, you will not follow all of these approaches. You will only follow one approach. So even if you master one single approach, that's totally fine. You don't have to say that I know all the cloud migration strategies. That is technically not possible, because in one company, you will not follow all of these stages. Okay. Or you will not follow all of these strategies. But instead, what I've explained you in the previous step, you will follow all of them. So again, to just quickly explain, rehost is a very popular one. Most of the companies use the rehost mechanism, which is called as lift and shift. In this stage, or in this strategy, what you will do is you will spend very less effort. You will take your applications and you will create similar environment on AWS. If you have Kubernetes cluster with 3 nodes, then you will create 3 EC2 instances, same number of namespaces, and you will deploy the applications on that Kubernetes cluster. You will not change anything. So this mechanism is called as rehost. And in this rehost mechanism, you will get some advantage, like you will get some cost optimization. You will reduce the cost, but that will be minimum, because you haven't followed the best practices of AWS yet. Right? AWS says you that, okay, you can follow this measures to reduce the cost, or AWS will tell you that, okay, you can create these kind of things to reduce the cost or to improve the scalability, availability. So that things you cannot get directly by implementing the lift and shift. If you use lift and shift, you will get only minimum scalability, efficiency, optimization, and availability. Yes, there are some companies who start with lift and shift, and once the lift and shift is done, then they will go for best practices on AWS, and they will get that cost optimization or whatever things that I've just explained. But the easiest way to migrate applications onto cloud is rehost mechanism, which is also called as lift and shift. Then you have replatform, which is kind of lift and shift, but additionally, I mean, what you will do more than lift and shift is that you will take the best practices of AWS, or you will take the good features of AWS and you will try to implement on your applications. That is, okay, you might create the same Kubernetes cluster, you might do the same thing, but additionally, what you will try to do is you will try to put the control plane in different places so that you can achieve the scalability, you can achieve the availability. And then if AWS says that, okay, do this to get the good cost optimization, then you will do that as part of the replatform thing. Then you have refactor, like I explained. Let's say your application is a monolith and you will try to migrate onto the AWS platform. So there, firstly, you have to go with the microservice architecture. Once you shift your application onto microservice architecture, you have to architect your applications in such a way that they are compatible with AWS, or they are compatible in the world of containers if you are trying to use container services on AWS. So as part of refactor or re-architecture stage, you will go with a lot of re-architecture, or you'll go with a lot of changes to your applications. Then you have relocate. So relocate is nothing but let's say you are using a Kubernetes cluster on your on-premises. What you will try to do as part of relocate is you will move to platforms like EKS, or you will move to platforms like OpenShift on AWS. So there is a service on OpenShift called as Rosa, which is Red Hat OpenShift on AWS. So you will go for these kind of things if you are using relocate. So relocate can be costly as well, and you have to use relocate very, very carefully, because one is you are migrating to cloud, and the second thing is you are also changing your platform completely, right? Then you have retain. So retain is a very, very simple thing. Let's say that you are doing the cloud migration in 6 stages. Okay, phase one, you do 50 applications, phase two, you do 20, phase three, you do 30. And while you are deciding the stages, you have realized that there are some 30 applications. Okay, so these 30 applications, like, they can either be on premises, or they are not that important to migrate on cloud. What kind of services this can be? Let me give you very simple example. When I was working on a banking project, there are some applications which are very, very secure, like they have the user related information. There are some mainframe applications which are very important for the payments and transactions part. So the bank that I worked for, they said that, okay, do not migrate these kind of applications to the AWS platform. Let's keep it on our on-premises platform, and the applications that are on the AWS will connect to them in a secure way. Okay, so all the 170 applications will be on the AWS platform, and there will be a gateway for one of these applications to connect to the secure applications on the on-premises. This kind of mechanism is called as retain, where you will retain some applications and you will not migrate them onto the AWS platform. Then you have retire. Retire is nothing but, let's say, out of these 200 applications, you have realized that 10 applications nobody is using. Okay, and if you migrate them onto the cloud, you have to spend some time, and there are 0 customers. You can simply retire those applications. Finally, there is repurchase. So repurchase is nothing but, let's say you are using VMware platform on your on-premises. Okay. Now what you can do is, when you move on to the AWS cloud platform, so either you can purchase a similar kind of platform on your AWS cloud platform, or you can look for other opportunities, options. So repurchase is a very, very less used option these days. So if you order in terms of ranking, these are the 3 things that are very, very widely used that I've seen. Then retain and retire is not exactly cloud migration strategy. It is a way where you decide, okay, so should I keep these applications on premises? Should I retire these applications? Is it okay if these applications not go onto cloud? So it's kind of discussion where you decide within the team, okay, let's keep these applications on premises, or let's retire these applications completely. Right? So this is how cloud migration works entirely. Now, taking an application and migrating onto cloud is very, very simple. It's not even a big deal. But how you work on that project, because these project goes for years of times. Okay, because there will be hundreds of microservices, 100, 200, 300. So you have to learn on how to create the stages, how to create the phases, how to monitor, how to optimize, right? So this is very, very important in the cloud migration process. So I hope you will explain this same to the interviewer instead of just explaining that we use the lift and shift mechanism and migrated the applications. And the other important thing is sometimes you will have the databases. Now, if your applications have databases or if your applications are connecting to databases, you also have to migrate these databases onto cloud platform. Now you have to be additional, like, you have to be little more cautious when you deal with databases. Like instead of just migrating it, there are two things that you have to do. First is you have to find the right fit on the AWS platform. Let's say you are using MySQL or you are using any kind of database on your local, and you have a similar kind of service that AWS provides, but that service is highly reliable because AWS is managing that. Usually, when you manage your databases, you spend a lot of effort, right? If there is a similar service on AWS and that is completely managed by AWS, then you can move on to those AWS database services. Best example is RDS. Many people migrate onto the AWS RDS because RDS is fully managed by AWS. This is step one when you do the database migration. And the step two is that you have to take backups of your database, because sometimes databases are very huge. And during the migration, you might lose some data. Okay. And the other thing is that while migration you do something wrong or something has happened, and because of these things your database is not accessible. So what you have to do is you have to keep a backup of your database. That means even while migrating your database onto cloud, you have to have a database in one of your pre-prod environments or staging environments, and if something goes wrong, you can immediately redirect your customer to this database. What you can do is simply you can change the URLs that your application is trying to access. Let's say your application is trying to access database on AWS, and for some reason you have not done the migration well. What you can do is you can immediately point your database that is in your pre-prod or your prod on-premises prod environment. So these are some things that you have to take care if you are using database. So this is how you have to explain cloud migration, and definitely your interviewer will be satisfied if you explain all of these things in a very, very clear way, right? I hope you enjoyed this video, and please follow the same process during the interviews and do not panic. Migration strategies is basically your experience. It's not something that you can read and learn. But if you watch videos like this, you can at least get some knowledge. Okay, this is how cloud migration happens in some real organizations. And you try to put the same thing to your interviewer. And if you are not sure about something, just tell them that, okay, I worked in the cloud migration just for 6 months and have not encountered that scenario. Given an opportunity, I'll learn about it. Okay. So with this, I'll conclude this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Bye.